At issue tonight, the biggest moments in politics during a dramatic and eventful year. This was 2025.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister.
The golden age of America begins right now.
The question was about pipelines.
I'm getting to it.
Tonight, I've been informed a party leader that I'll be stepping down as party leader.
We've been stressing that monetary policy cannot undo the damage caused by tariffs.
Thank you very much to the great people of Battle River Crowfoot.
History of nations, they're punctuated by hinge moments.
I'm Rosemary Barton. Here with me in person is At Issue to look back at what has been a remarkable year in Canadian politics, from, as you saw, resignations, an election, a country under threat from its closest neighbor. Here to break it all down, Chantal Hebert, Andrew Coyne, Althia Raj. Good to see you all. I kind of got goosebumps watching those clip packs because I'm like, look at all the stuff we did this year. And I probably say that every year, but it was a big year. There was a lot going on. So we want to start with the question: what was the biggest political win of the year? Biggest political win, biggest political loss. I suspect the answers might be similar, but Chantal, you start us off.
Because you put them back to back, it invites the answer. Joined at the hip, the Carney victory.
Yeah.
At this time last year, Mark Carney wasn't a politician, or he was maybe in his own mirror, but we weren't watching him. And at this time last year, Pierre Poilievre had a huge lead and was probably thinking of how the drapes would fit in the Prime Minister's residence. So one is the biggest political win, brought the Liberals back from the basement, and the other is back to the basement political loss.
Andrew, you had the same.
It's a win for the Liberals. It's also very much a win for Mark Carney personally. Yes, he benefited from not being either Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre. Yes, he got an assist from Donald Trump declaring he wanted to annex the country. But think of what happened there. He'd never been elected to anything. He'd never run for anything.
I know.
And in the space of a few weeks, wins the Liberal leadership by a thumping margin, more than anybody expected, assumes the powers of the Prime Minister, all the awesome responsibilities that, well, again, with no experience in office of any kind other than being the governor of the Bank of Canada, but no political experience. And then finally wins the election. I just don't think you can overstate what extraordinary thing. Now, you also want to do the loser at the same time. Pierre Poilievre also has to wear that loss as much as Mark Carney can be credited for that victory. He was the face of the party. Some would say he was too much the face of the party, given his personal unpopularity numbers. The strategy they pursued, which seemed to miss the whole Trump wave, he's got to bear responsibility for that. Yes, he managed to pull them out with a 41% of the support, and they increased their seats, and they got a moral victory, et cetera. But moral victories are for losers. You know, he had a 25-point lead, and he threw it away.
Okay. And Althia, you have the same ones as well.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to have a different answer this year, but I would say the Liberals winning a fourth term. This was a government that was basically, most MPs thought they were going to lose their seats, Liberal MPs, obviously, and to have them surmount a 25-point lead from the Conservatives was quite a feat. I don't know if I completely agree that no one expected it. They thought they were actually going to win a majority government after that election. But they came really close. And the Conservatives have chosen still to keep Pierre Poilievre, at least for now, front and center. I don't know that Mr. Poilievre could have pivoted more because his base really doesn't feel the same way, or half his base really doesn't feel the same way about Donald Trump. But it was quite a change in fortune. When you look back a year ago,
incredible.
Abacus Data had a poll suggesting basically that Donald Trump was not going to help the Liberals. I mean, this was smooth sailing for Pierre Poilievre. And now
I hope we keep that in mind as we look to polls that say we all love pipelines. I just want to add,
and then I'm going to pick up
remember this time last year, with people are now saying it was a no-brainer, Mark Carney. How many columns did you read comparing him to Michael Ignatieff? And predicting that he would, he didn't do the Michael Ignatieff thing.
More of a political animal than
we suspected. Okay, we got to pick up speed a little bit here. Biggest political surprise of the year. Althia, you go first.
This is the same thing. Basically, the Liberals coming out of almost nowhere and winning a fourth term. Also, Mark Carney not being the environmentalist that a lot of Liberals expected, believed he was, told voters at the door during the election campaign. That has been a bit of a surprise.
Andrew?
The shift in the polls in particular, most of which happened before the campaign. So Justin Trudeau leaves on January 6th. They're an average of 25 points behind. By the time Mark Carney became the prime minister, they were more or less level. And by the time he called the election 2 weeks later, they were about 5 or 6 points ahead. So at the beginning of the campaign, they were already 6 points ahead. For most of the campaign, there were 6 or 8 points. Conservatives closed the gap a little bit at the end, but most of that shift happened without any campaign going on.
I think many Liberal voters would have been surprised at the speed at which Mark Carney traded his climate credentials for the champion fossil fuel development that he has become. I didn't hear that energy superpower line that much during the election campaign. I must have missed it in the translation.
Sure didn't hear about a pipeline, that's for sure. Okay, who impressed you the most with their leadership? That can be anyone, Andrew.
Yeah, when I say impressed, I don't necessarily agree with
it. Doesn't mean a good thing. Yeah. No, it just means remarkable.
But some of it I do. So Carney's ability to basically completely change the colors of the whole party. It tells you the powers of a party leader and prime minister in particular. It tells you how malleable the Liberals are in particular. If you didn't think they were shapeshifters before this, you certainly did that. But stealing all of the Conservatives' policies in the space of the last 9 or 10 months, if I were conservative, I would certainly be absolutely furious, and you could see them spluttering sometime with indignation at it. It's politics at its seamiest, but it worked.
Yeah, well, if you're a conservative and you're stunned, then you miss the Clarity Act and the zero deficit that Jean Chrétien stole from Preston Manning and Stephen Harper. I didn't go for the impressed, but we do not often have ministers who resign on principle. I think Stephen Guilbeault managed to do just that.
Yes.
And to keep his comments very centered on his issue.
Yes.
He also got a lot of leeway. I'm impressed by how much independence he's been afforded. I'm assuming the Prime Minister's office is hoping he goes somewhere for Christmas.
And he probably will, but I would agree that, and this was your choice as well, that it's not just that he left on principle, it's that he did it without bitterness.
Yeah.
He wasn't, there was no real bitterness or animosity. There's a lot of criticism, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, it's not very often, frankly. The last time I can think of a comparable situation is Michael Chong leaving in 2006. But that you're sacrificing a third of your salary to say, I cannot defend this. And there's a lot of people around the cabinet table that don't agree with a whole bunch of stuff, but they don't say,
they suck it up. Yeah.
I cannot, for my personal values and my integrity, I can't stand by this. Like, that is pretty freaking impressive. So I agree with Chantal and Stephen Guilbeault.
Okay, who impressed you the least? This is our last one before we take a break. Althia.
I'm looking up my notes. What did I tell you?
The guy south of the border.
Oh, Donald Trump.
How could you forget him?
I was like, I don't remember what I wrote to you guys. I know we should not be surprised, but I am continuously surprised. And I'm surprised at the force, the speed at which norms are just vanishing. The checks that you thought existed, like I always assumed there were way more checks in the US than there were in Canada. And then you realize how quickly everything can crumble. No shame, and the voices calling this out, there are too few, like even the No Kings March. I would have thought there would have been a No Kings March almost every day, at least every week. Yeah. And yet there isn't. It is shocking, surprising, disappointing to say the least.
Okay, you two had the same one. So I'll let you go first.
Well, I certainly can't top that, but if we're staying within Canada, Jagmeet Singh. Tom Mulcair was driven from the leadership because he only got 44 seats. Jagmeet got 24 and then 24, and then the absolute floor fell through in the last election. But throughout that, he was gaffe prone. He often looked like he was not fully informed on the issues. He never got the sense that anybody in the NDP was particularly excited to have him as leader. It's just they were kind of stuck with him. And ultimately, he paid the price.
Yeah, he probably set the party back a decade. Remember, Alexa McDonough brought the party to Atlantic Canada, Jack Layton to Quebec and other regions. And in every election, Jagmeet Singh made the NDP retreat, not because he was promoting some wild idea that Canadians wouldn't want to sign up on, like Medicare, but because he was just not doing much of anything. And those last 2 years where you support the government, but at every turn you say they're terrible, well, pick a lane here.
I'm going to guess Jagmeet Singh will be glad to see 2025 go. That's just a guess.
Hey, at least he didn't win his seat, because I think it would have been worse for him if he had stayed.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll keep the conversation going. Looking back on 2025, you are watching At Issue.
At Issue, the year in review, a struggling Canadian economy, and negotiating with Donald Trump. We're continuing to break down some of the biggest moments from 2025.
Let's build the strongest economy in the G7. Let's build Canada strong.
Talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
You don't negotiate through weakness, you negotiate through strength.
Increased trade friction with the United States means our economy will work less efficiently.
Still no win, still no deal, still no elbows.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
That wasn't even really relevant to the montage. We just wanted to play it one more time before the year was out. Welcome back. I'm Rosemary Barton. With me again, Chantal, Andrew, and Althia. Okay, best, worst political play of the year. Andrew.
I hate to repeat myself,
but
the Liberals switching out leaders.
Yes.
Completely adopting 180-degree opposite policies in the space of a few weeks. There's a reason why this is the most successful political party in the democratic world over the last century, and it's not to do with their strident or sterling principles. It's the utter malleability. But just from a pure politics standpoint, you kind of have to give them a low whistle of appreciation.
And that's sort of yours as well, a little more specific, but.
I think the best play is Justin Trudeau deciding to walk away.
Took a while, though.
It took a while, but he could have dragged it out.
That's true.
And he allowed the leadership race to happen so that Mark Carney could win it. And now he's dating Katy Perry and seems to be having the time of his life. So that's definitely the best political play for him. And worst political play, I would say,
if you have time, go ahead.
Mark Carney not using cabinet. I think that the Prime Minister's desire to, and I think the Conservatives are right about saying this, basically run things like a boardroom and not like a cabinet government. Like if they had discussed the MOU in cabinet, more than 2 days before he announced it, I don't think Stephen Guilbeault would have quit. I don't think the electoral coalition that the Liberals that brought the Liberals to power would have been in jeopardy as it is at the moment. So I think that it's not just some of the measures in C5 or some of the measures in C50, and I'm sure we'll talk about these bills later, but I do think that he doesn't use the political experience around the table to help him govern, because he's not just there to run the show, he's there to get reelected.
Best, worst political play. I'll come back for your worst.
And I didn't want to go back to the election because a few things happened. And so I went really down market. But and I thought forcing, on the part of the Liberals, forcing the Conservatives. Well, it wasn't just the Liberals that did that. The NDP also played a role in that. But forcing the Conservatives to show how desperately they wanted to avoid an election, even if they wanted to vote against the budget. I thought that is an interesting vignette. Everybody can understand this idea of suddenly people who are within reach of the vote showing up because some app doesn't work. No, I thought that was an interesting play. It kind of tells you all you need to know about how the official opposition doesn't walk its talk.
Your worst political play is Quebec specific.
It's Quebec, and it's Quebec Premier François Legault's insistence on believing that he's not a dead man walking. Maybe this time next year I'll say, I got it all wrong, and he'll have a recovery. But if he had that recovery, we would today be sitting saying how great for Justin Trudeau to have stuck around because he won. And Justin Trudeau would not have won the federal election, and I don't believe there's an election left in François Legault, but he has convinced himself so far that his first condition used to be Quebecers want me to run. Well, when your party is at 16%, Quebecers do not want you to run.
Your worst play.
Just going back to the failure to spot the Trump wave on the Conservative campaign. Who did see it was Doug Ford, who called a snap election on it and won because of it. I take Althia's point that, there's a large section of the conservative base that is okay with Trump, but that's exactly the point. Sometimes in politics, the thing you have to do is break with your party's most extreme faction. It absolutely, that was the worry people had, a lot of people, about Pierre Poilievre, was that in dealing with Trump, he'd be too beholden to his base, wouldn't be able to stand up to him. That was a moment for him to say, look, I know this isn't going to be popular with some of my supporters, but this is the right thing to do, et cetera, and he missed that opportunity.
Okay, well, let's jump ahead then to the Premier of the Year on that one, and Chantal, you can pick up there for that exact reason.
So I don't live in Ontario, as opposed to others, so I can look at Premier Ford from a distance, and I have to say that if you're going to look at premiers this year, he did dominate the provincial pack for the year. People who didn't like his ads will disagree, but he has been such a central player in the Canada-US debate versus other premiers. That I saw a poll that showed him one of the 3 or 4 most popular politicians in Quebec. That included Quebec politicians. Then you think the Premier of Ontario suddenly gets into that. And the play, which was to call an election to use the Trump factor, was a very smart play.
I know Canadians in other provinces who would like to vote for Doug Ford. I mean, that's how popular he is elsewhere.
Let's wait for his first French interview to continue down that particular avenue.
Andrew, best Premier of the Year.
Well, I wouldn't say best Premier necessarily.
Premier of the Year.
Premier of the Year, to me, is hands down is Danielle Smith. Whether you agree with the things she was saying and doing or not, and I disagree with a lot of them, she dominated the national agenda. Whether you're talking about invoking the notwithstanding clause, when you're talking about radical healthcare reforms that may or may not be well considered, whether you're talking about the memorandum of understanding on the energy thing with all of the changes in federal policy that were involved in that, I've rarely seen a premier, a provincial premier, who's had that much impact on the national scene.
Last minute to you.
I feel like we need to define what we mean by best premier.
It's not best. It's Premier of the Year.
Premier of the Year. Well, I mean, in Ontario, I feel like the allegations of conflict of interest surrounding Doug Ford would basically disqualify him. In Alberta, Premier Smith's basically kowtowing to the separatists, fueling the movement.
It's someone,
I understand the use of the notwithstanding clause, the affront on labor rights.
They would win an award for taking up a room. That's who it is.
Hitler was
tell me your person. Tell me your person.
It's not Player of the Year.
So I picked the nice guy, Bob Canoe.
Okay.
There
you go. Just because.
I think he is a nice person. He's popular, but he has managed to bring different parts of Manitobans and see themselves reflected in the government. And he is into consensus and conciliatory.
I think you're just trying to suck up to the Manitobans at the table.
You guys picked others. I'm just saying, I think it's nice to be able to say, you know what? There is so much more that unites us, and here's a leader who's focused on that.
He's a very shrewd, skilled politician.
It's been a very long and busy year in Canadian politics. Here to look back at some of the stories that didn't get as much attention. Chantal Hebert, Andrew Coyne, Althia Raj. Althia, you start us off on this one. A story that we should have paid more attention to. Maybe you paid attention, but the rest of us didn't. I should put it that way.
The Prime Minister's willingness to discard democratic norms in our country, to me, is very alarming. We saw it first with C5, which I don't think anybody wants to make projects go very few people want to make projects go slower. But in the type of legislation, the breadth of the law that he is giving himself the ability to disregard almost any law in the land, to vest that power in one individual to say, these conditions will apply to this project or no condition will apply to any project, is crazy. And the Liberals would have been protesting in the streets if a Conservative had done this. And the precedent that it creates is, to me, very concerning.
Even though they haven't done it yet.
Even though no project has been listed as a project of national interest yet. But already you have Pierre Poilievre, for example, saying that he's going to use the law to pass a new pipeline kind of on the Northern Gateway route, that he's going to create dozens of LNG projects using this piece of legislation. And then in the Budget Implementation Act, we see in the middle of it, hidden, basically no one talked about this, they're giving themselves the power to exempt an individual, a company who wants to test a product, a procedure, even a regulation, so another law, up to 6 years without, they would even, once the testing is done, they would allow the exemption to remain in place. And there's no attention paid to this,
Well,
and there's no justification.
You both wrote about it. You're both here talking about it.
But to me, it's really concerning.
Okay.
Why do they need these powers?
Okay, Andrew, you pick up on that, and then I'll bring in Chantal.
Well,
for
this
her
is sort of the flip side of that, perhaps, and I think it's the sort of boiling rage and division and volatility that's just below the surface of Canadian politics. If you looked at that federal election, you'd say, oh, well, everyone voted, 80% voted for the two major parties, all is calm. But there was huge shifts within that election. There's been, leaders being brought down. There's been new parties starting up. And I was struck by a piece by Andre Turcotte, the pollster, the other day on the Hub website, where he said, it's extraordinary the number of answers when people ask, will give very populist type answers. Mm-hmm. They don't think politicians are listening to them. They don't think they have an influence on it, et cetera, et cetera. But then if you ask them, are you a populist? They'll say no. Or do you support a populist party?
Right.
No.
Right.
Don't mistake the one for the other. And I think it may be aligned to this. We have centralized power so much, federally and provincially, in the office of the prime ministers and the premiers. And I think it's starting to filter through to people that there's
and that's sort of, that gets to your answer as well on this.
But what Althia was saying, we didn't pay enough attention. I believe that we will be paying a lot of attention to these powers once people see in practice what it means. Yeah. A lot of the things put in place now, people seem to be shrugging them off, and they are shrugging off, I believe, the now routine use of the notwithstanding clause.
Even though we talk about that all the time.
Basically say, because to tell you the truth, when you say, close the derogation or the notwithstanding clause, people tune you out.
Yeah.
They don't connect it to their everyday
lives. Yeah.
We will be talking, for those who hate that conversation, the Supreme Court will hear a challenge that will deal with this issue in March. We will be talking about this time next year, but it matters because he said, Althia said, the Conservatives want to use those new powers to do X, Y, and Z. Well, the social conservatives would like to use the notwithstanding clause to do away with abortion rights, same-sex marriage. Do you want so at some point, how long does it take before people say, well, do we have a Charter of Rights or not? And if we don't want to have one, well, let's just...
But it's all become routine. Omnibus bills have become routine. Cutting off debate through time allocations is becoming routine. The biggest fight in Canadian politics, the pipeline debate in 1956, was because they brought in closure. Now it happens every other bill, and nobody bats an eye.
Okay, but on the notwithstanding clause, what I agree with Chantal. What has happened is we've normalized the use of it. Bill 21 2.0 in Quebec barely got any coverage in the rest of Canada, which is if you're wearing a turban, we don't want you to be a janitor in the school.
That's the Supreme Court decision, is it not in March that we're going to hear?
Well, we're going to hear on Bill 21.
We're mostly going to hear about the notwithstanding clause.
Sure, the use
But
of
this is a new version of the bill,
yeah.
and in the stories that were written about this new version of the bill, they didn't even mention Radio-Canada, I think it was La Presse also, or CP, didn't even mention that they had used the notwithstanding clause. It's become not news anymore.
Danielle Smith did it 4 times in a week.
She did. Okay. On that depressing note, I'm glad I've had you all year. That is at issue for this week as we look back at the year that was. The next one, we're going to look ahead. I'm Rosemary Barton. Thanks so much for watching.